Hi, it's Sharon Henderson here from KEM Biz in a Box, and today I wanted to share a cautionary tale about WordPress plugins. I think we've talked on previous occasions about WordPress and how that is the content management system that we use. It's kind of like the engine room that powers your website, and it's the equivalent of platforms like Weebly and Wix, etc. But with WordPress, you own your own website, and all the content that you create is also stored within WordPress as the content management system, or CMS. Along with a WordPress site, you also need a theme, which is the external interface. It's the pretty decoration, if you like, that the visitors see on the front end of the site. So it's what makes it look pretty to the outside world. And additionally, you're going to need some software to plug into your WordPress platform to increase functionality, depending on whatever it is that you might require for your site. And that software that you plug in are called plugins, funnily enough. So let's have a look at some plugins so you have some idea of what we're talking about. So what I'm going to do is just share, let's have a look. I'm going to share the back end of a site that I'm just developing at the moment for somebody's KEM Biz in a Box store. So let's have a look. Okay, so this is the back end of the website. This is what we see. This is not what the visitors see, obviously. So let's just go to plugins here, and let's say add new plugins. All right, so what we're seeing here are a host of different plugins, and there's a search facility there. And there are a gazillion different plugins, basically. So we've got this one here, a Kismet, which protects against spam, which can be a real problem at times. What else? So we could look at pop-ups, say. Let's search for pop-ups. Okay, and there are many, many different pop-up plugins too. Now, the thing about where I'm searching from within my dashboard is that all these plugins are the freemium or free versions. And most of them you can actually upgrade to a premium version if you want. And you'll see here, this is what you want to check for. You want to make sure it was updated recently and it's compatible with your version of WordPress. Because if it's not, then you're going to, in all likelihood, run into problems, if not straight away, then in the future. So for anything you can ever imagine needing, someone will have written a plugin that you can use. Okay. So basically, when I started out building sites, I felt like a child in a candy store. I'm a real techie, and I love the fact that there were all these fantastic toys, new toys that I could play with. And as you can see, you type anything and there's a plugin for absolutely everything, and I wanted them all. It felt absolutely great that I could install these plugins, play around with them, and my site just did so much cool stuff, really did. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But what I started to see happen was that I had weird quirks with my site. It stopped working as it was supposed to, and I was just running into lots of different problems and had no real idea why. And I also found my site started to slow down as well. I had problems saving stuff, and that's a big one. If you've just written a long blog post and then you hit save and it won't save, and you lose everything, then you can imagine you're not a very happy camper. I was having problems with my theme. It wasn't opening properly. I couldn't edit it on the back end. All sorts of strange things were happening, and I was starting to tear my hair out. So I contacted my host company to see if it was a hosting issue, and they had a look at the site and remarked that I had a lot of plugins, way too many. And it was one of those things that I just didn't really want to hear. And it took me a wee while to accept that they were right. And the reason for this is that every single plugin that you install is injecting new code into your WordPress site. And that code has the potential to conflict with what you already have there, both in terms of your theme and your other software that you already have installed. So it's a real melting pot of code, and the more plugins you have, the more and the greater the risk that you're going to have conflicts. And it may be that the conflict is between two plugins that you've installed, because it's impossible to check every single piece of software against every other conceivable piece of software that you might install and rule out conflicts for everything. So, and then the other thing is you look at these plugins and they make the most fabulous claims. So it's very, very easy to get suckered in. And they often claim that they're lightweight, but you need to have a look at the reality of it and run performance tests and see where the bottlenecks are in your website performance. So not only are there conflicts, but the more code you have, the more bloat you have, and that's going to slow down your site and have it performing less than adequately. And that results in a bad user experience. And the last thing you want is to lose visitors because they can't be bothered waiting for your site to load, or because it's just not performing right. Those are things that are absolute no-nos. Another thing to be aware of is that because these plugins are free, a lot of them aren't maintained that regularly. So that's something else to be aware of. If you upgrade to the premium version, then you tend to find that you get premium support alongside your subscription to those premium plugins, and they will help you. That's not usually available with the free versions. So what were my epiphanies in this whole experience? Well, firstly, only use plugins that are up to date and where they actually say that they're compatible. Secondly, use only what you absolutely need. Don't get suckered in by all the claims, all the different things your website can do, because you really need to go back to basics. The most important thing is to have a site that is running well and performing as it should, because customer experience is everything. You do need a caching plugin. A caching plugin basically improves the customer experience, the visitor experience, because it will store certain items of information so that when the visitor returns, they don't have to be reloaded, they're already there. So that's really handy, but you have to be really careful about the caching plugin that you choose, because if you get the settings wrong on them, then you can have major issues with performance, with JavaScript, all sorts of things that can actually have the opposite effect of what you're trying to achieve, which is a good customer experience. So basically, you need to know what you do when it comes to caching plugins. So for me, once I finally got to a point of accepting that I couldn't have all my toys on the one site, I went back and I did a lot of research, and I had a good play around to figure out which plugins I absolutely needed. And I then made sure that the ones that I had were lightweight, because bloat is just going to slow down your site. And a lot of plugins, they pack in a lot of different functionality to draw you in. But if they do extra things with more bells and whistles, that means more code. More code means bloat that is unnecessary and just has a negative effect on your website. So that was my focus, and it actually took me quite a long time to work through and figure out exactly what were the best premium themes and what were the best plugins to add. And a note on premium themes, there's a whole heap of free themes on WordPress that you can use. But if you go for a premium theme, you do your research right, then you can get a theme that actually integrates a lot of the functionality that you otherwise have to load plugins to achieve. And the theme that we use does this, so that everything is already integrated, which means you don't have to worry about conflicts. All the functionality is there, which means we actually don't need to use an awful lot of plugins for extra functionality. And what we do use, we've tested to the nth degree. So if you look at my list of plugins on my sites, there are not many at all. If you looked a few years back at my sites, you'd see a gazillion different plugins. So it's been a real learning curve for me. And letting go of the frilly stuff was a bit of a process, but now functionality is key. You just need to use what you need, and all the extra bells and whistles, just we get rid of those because they're not necessary and they just have a negative effect. So I have been through that process, and I'm really satisfied with the balance that we've now struck between efficiency and performance of the site and the functionality that we offer with our KEM BusinessBox stores. And what that means for you is that your customers will benefit, because we have done the legwork. We have put the time in to trial and test the software and make sure that everything is as it needs to be. And KiwiEarthMother.com, which is my own online store, has been like the mothership, the flagship store that we have tried and tested everything on. And it only sports the very best coded plugins and the very best of themes, a premium theme actually. So the result is that every KM BusinessBox store that we sell is the perfect balance of functionality and clean coding. They perform well, they do everything you need them to do and more, and they run fast. So we've taken the guesswork out of plugin and theme selection. We've saved you so much time because it's such a huge process otherwise. And everything that you get has been thoroughly tested to make sure that your experience running a KEM store is as it should be. And equally important, the experience that your customers get will be top-notch, meaning that they'll want to come back to your site because the experience of using your site will be everything that they want it to be. I can think, as I'm actually saying that, of a particular website that I shall not name, but I'm sure you are well aware of it, for purchasing herbal and organic and natural products. And every time I think about making a repeat order, I just shudder. The thought of doing it actually puts me off going and making those purchases, because it's not user friendly and it's a pain to operate, a pain to order stuff and find stuff. And so they would get a lot more custom from me if their interface was more user friendly, and it's not. And that's definitely what we wanted to avoid with our KEM stores. So what you get is exactly what you should get, which is a great experience when using the back end and updating the store and running the store, and even more importantly, the experience that your customers get, which means that you're going to have them coming back time and again to buy more of your products.